Good morning. This is Live with the Miami's Community News, and I'm Michael Miller. We have a special guest today, Rabbi Manis Friedman, and he's a world-renowned author, counselor, teacher, and speaker. Well known for your provocative thinking. Yes, for many, many years. You've been on tours and seminars and retreats from around the world, and you've been featured on CNN, A&E Reviews, PBS, and PBC worldwide, as well as in the New York Times, Rolling Stone, 17 Guideposts, and Publishers Weekly.
Rolling Stone?
Yes, sir. All right. Imagine that. Your first book, Doesn't Anyone Blush Anymore, was a hit and widely praised. How many books have you written so far?
5.
5 books. Some recent one back in 2018, The Joy of Intimacy, A Soulful Guide to Love and Marriage. When we talk with people and we use the word intimate, frequently, when you say that, that's a sanitized way of saying I had with this person. But when we say intimacy, we sort of get lost in that. And so my question to you is, what is true intimacy, and how could we possibly get there?
That's the big question for today. It used to be that all physical exchange, interaction was considered intimate. Holding hands was intimate. It was exciting. It was dangerous. It was something special. But in the 60s, we all got together thinking we're very smart, and we said, we don't have to be so serious about this. Relax, have some fun, free love. And we took all the intimacy out of it.
So there are occasions, not enough, when I hold hands with my wife, and we have this moment of hopefulness and a glimmer of it without any other expectation other than to have that connection. And that I'm not sure if that's true intimacy, but it has that spark that is there.
Yeah, because I think the definition of intimacy is we are each other's, we belong to each other without any reason, without any objective, without any conditions, just us.
So often, and we see it on TV where they say men can't have friends that are women, because the sole purpose underneath there is to get the. So how do we get to a point to where you can have a relationship with somebody with no other expectation other than that moment of that? How do we do that?
Well, first we have to believe in it. Most people, this guy says, I love everything about my wife. I said, well, that sounds nice, but I'm wondering why your wife wants a divorce. If you love everything about her and she wants a divorce, something isn't adding up. So I asked him, you love everything about your wife, but do you love her? He said, I love everything about her. I said, no, not about her, her. He says, I don't know what that means. What is her if you take away all the goodies?
You mean like tall, dark, and handsome, and rich, and beautiful, and
or smart, or kind, or supportive? When your husband is out of town, when your wife is out of town, you miss him or her. What do you miss? What do I miss? I miss her. She's not here. Yeah, but what do you miss about her? That's a ridiculous question. I miss her. Problem is, as soon as she comes home, it becomes about something.
So how do we move past this? And you wrote that marriage is at best difficult, but probably impossible to do. How do we get to that point to where we can sift through all the basic instinctive things that we're with somebody? Attractive, all right, we get along with them, and we frequently hear, oh, we like the same things. And you bring up a really good point. When they're gone, what is it you miss? How do we get to that point, the essence of her or him? How do we get our brains, minds, and our soul into that?
Well, the good news is that after 50 or 55 years of marriage, it happens. All the things you used as motivation for getting together, being together, they all fade. and you just can't live without each other.
Before we move on, and we want to remind people that you're going to be at the Chabad of Miami in Coconut Grove next Wednesday, January 18th. On the screen will be the scrolling across the bottom where people can go to the website, and there's a QR code. People can click on that, or they can go to that. And so they can sign up to see you. That's a week from today. In the meanwhile, you're going to be traveling again today and next week. Where are you headed off to?
Pensacola. We rented out a place, and we're having mature women getting together to study, to inspire each other.
My wife has been involved, and she's not a mature woman, all right? She's much younger than that, all right? But because of the things that you do across the world, she has learned a lot, all right? A lot. And as I mentioned before, when my wife was a teenager, you taught her, which he just became aware of today, I think, in Minneapolis. But she has been able to, she's grown so much and almost got me to a point to where I've become more of a believer in that relationship about how to rise above that now that the kids are gone and all that stuff that is instinctive in us, right, to do. So we're moving along very nicely. And let's talk about how relationships have changed because of COVID. Let's talk about loneliness and being lonely and how it's changed the family unit.
COVID brought out a lot of good in people, much more good than bad. Remember the experts when we realized we're going to have to be locked into the house together? And the experts were saying, get out the body bags. This is going to be bad. It wasn't. It was really very good.
In some of the videos that you have on YouTube, and you have a lot of them, I was listening to one recently where you talked about who said it was bad to be with the kids for 6 hours? Who said it was bad to be with your spouse? And everybody I knew was sort of like pretending that it was terrible. Couldn't wait for school to be back in, right? That was only so the parents could do something else and not be with their kids. So is that one of the things that's happened?
So this goes back to the concept of things versus, what versus who. Focus on the person. Because of COVID, we realized that many of the things we thought made up life are not so necessary. You don't have to travel. You don't have to go to a nightclub. You don't have to go to a sports event. You don't even have to go shopping. And if those things are not what life is made of, then what is life? And we went deeper and we matured and we realized that it's the people, not the things.
And you bring up a good point as far as some of those things that we changed caused some people to be much more closer, much more intimate. And in my case, I would take off my clothes every day. I would go in the pool and to protect that. And I had a pedicure. And I went home. She locked me out of the house for 2 days because I didn't take into account her feelings about it. And that was one of the things that I became acutely aware of. And subsequently, she forgave me for doing that. And we did get a little closer with. That's for
Sorry
you.
about that.
Okay. But there certainly was a loss of life and a loss of the ways we did things. We know that the little kids wanted to be around their parents more, and I'm not sure again with the parents. So we're not out of the way all the way, but certainly we are now looking back and say, okay, what do we want as we look forward? Do we want to return to the way work was? And that seemed to have changed forever at this point. 4-day weeks, lots of work off site. That seems to be standard, including what we have done here, but across the world. Why go in? I can stay home and I can be with the ones that we love. And speaking about it, what does love have to do with it?
There we go. This is the real shocker, the real surprise. We worship love in this country. Every problem is because there isn't enough love. The solution to every problem, more love. Love will keep us together. All you really need is love. It's terrible. Love can't do these things that we're depending on it to do. So relationships, marriages are suffering because of love.
people use that word pretty freely,
Yes.
right? Like, and you say, "I love all you guys," right? But the expectation of a person with another, when you say, "I love you," we have this automatic response that we've learned over our lifetime. Do you love me? And then when you don't hear it, what happens in the mind of the soul when we're expecting somebody to say, "And I love you too"?
I consider that an argument. A husband says, "I love you," and the wife says, "I love you." Can't they agree on anything?
Oh, good point.
So here's the point. Love is a thing. You either have it, you don't have it. You have a little, you have a lot. It's a thing. Then there's the person you're loving. Where is the focus? Is it on the person or is it on the love? You marry for love. Well, what happens when the love disappears? There's no relationship. You don't mean anything to me unless I love you. This is really bad.
For the person that can't get to that level of consciousness, because it certainly takes a lot of awareness to do it, like it does for true meditation versus sitting still. Sometimes when you meditate, and if you realize you're meditating, then you're really not, because you're thinking about that you're doing it. So being truly intimate and what is that? How does love fit into this intimacy thing, the concept of us?
The proper understanding of love, where does love fit? What is it all about? Someone significant or important in your life, you ought to love. But the love doesn't make them significant. It's not like if I love you, you're important. I stop loving you, you're garbage. That's what's going on. And it's very nasty.
Frequently you hear people say, "Well, I love him, but," right? It's almost they're using that as this segue into saying, "I love you, but I just had an affair." Then you...
Well, I had this young couple not too long ago. They come over to me and they say, "We are very much in love and we would like to get married. Would you do the wedding for us?"
Oh boy, are they in for it.
I said, "You're in love?" They said, "Yes." I said, "Then don't bother getting married." What are you getting married for? You're marrying for love. You already have the love. Enjoy it. What are you getting married for?
So tradition matters. And then sometimes when you say, "Well, I'm going to get married because traditionally by age 25 or 30, we're going to go do that. I'm going to go find somebody." And then the next question is, "I found somebody." And then we whisper, "When's the baby?" And so we push people along in the system.
We take it for granted that that's how it works.
Yes. And even though that more than half the population gets divorced within a certain period of time, and then in between they already have another friend.
And I'm blaming it on love.
Right.
The reason the divorce rate is so high is because of this fascination with love, veneration of love.
Why do people stay together?
They don't.
The other half.
Oh, the other half. I think because they got past the things, they connected to each other, and that bond is powerful.
So if a couple says, "I'm not in love anymore," what is that? What are they really saying in there?
If you compare our marriages today to our grandparents or great-grandparents, they married each other. They married each other. They were not looking for anything. And to say to them, "Well, you don't agree on so many things and you're having problems. Why don't you get divorced?" And it was unthinkable.
Yes.
Not have him, not be with her, unthinkable. But what about all those things you don't agree about? So we'll argue. See, we turned it around. We don't want each other, but if we have a lot of things that we're enjoying, we'll stay together.
In one of your books, you talk about being needed and needy and wanting to be loved. So let's talk about needs and wants.
I think the definition of intimacy is, I need someone. The definition of materialism is, I need something. Now, if I meet someone who has many things that I need, the things are what I'm marrying. If I'm marrying for love, I'm married to the love, not to the person I love. So if we made a bumper sticker, it should say, no thing about your wife is more important than your wife. But here's where people have a problem. Very common. Somebody says, why can't you just accept me for who I am? My answer is, I would love to accept you for who you am. But who am you? You don't know. I don't know. You don't know. Who? Accept me for who I really am. Well, who are you really? You don't know. You can't describe it. You can't.
How does a couple get to that point, or individual get to that point to where they can have this awareness, meaning they don't have to worry about breathing, they have enough food, and lots of their life is in pretty good condition? How can they get this awareness about themselves and open up to that? What do they need to do?
So let's go a little biblical on this one. Why did God create the world? Assuming God is perfect, God is all-powerful, all-knowing, what did he create a world for? The moral of that is that it's precisely when you are perfect in all things that you feel a need for someone. There's a certain humility or a certain vulnerability. Just me? Just me? Something's wrong with that. Even though I am perfect and I need nothing, but it's just me. And that's not acceptable. I'm not sure why. Why? If you're perfect and capable and independent, why would you look for someone else?
And what is the answers that you hear from people when you ask them that?
They don't know, because it's a divine feature. It's not human. The human being in us would much rather be alone. Leave me alone. Very human. But there's something divine about us, that we imitate God, or we're created in God's image. And he doesn't like being alone. It's not loneliness. It's a different thing.
And you bring up God, and in one of your videos, you talked about people believing in God. You went from, if you believe that this is when it happened over here, or you believe that it was a atomic particle that caused this. And then as I went down with you to that point, you say, okay, well, what was before that? I don't know. So if you believe that this, the science part of it, believe that this is where it started, your position on that is what?
Believing that subatomic particles generated the universe is so non-romantic.
It is.
It's so sterile.
But it
It's
appeals
so
to 25% of the population.
I don't know what the appeal is. What's the appeal?
It's just like, what?
It's like, oh, we figured it out. Well, wonderful. So this ability, or this need to have someone else in my life besides me, even though I don't need anything from this person. I don't need the services. I don't need the advantages. Being just me is not acceptable. That's beautiful, and that's intimate.
And you mentioned about needy, right? Not your physical, but need. I need to have stuff like that, and some of us know folks that are needy, and they try to suck the energy out of you. Pay attention to me, bring me all this stuff, but it's on a deeper level of neediness. It's like this very immature child that's in these grown people, and that awareness came to me recently, that when there are people that are needy, and there are people that want to be needed. Let's talk about that. I'm satisfied, I'm doing one, but it would be good if somebody or something wanted me. Can you talk about that?
Which means I need to know that I can make a difference, that there's something that depends on me. I need to know that I am needed. Because just me and my needs, depressing.
How do you get to that point about taking care of yourself and then rising to this level to where I want to make a difference? How do people become aware of that? Or is that just an age thing? As you get a little bit older, you start recognizing that?
I got to tell you this little story. I'm visiting this kid in the hospital who tried to commit suicide, and he's being held for observation, right? I go in there to visit him, and he's not interested in talking to me at all. He's ignoring me. Finally, he says, you can go home. The chaplain has already been here. I said, what did the chaplain say? He says something stupid. This is a 14-year-old kid. I said, what did he say that was stupid? He says, I shouldn't kill myself because God loves me. I said, that's stupid? He says, yeah. I said, I agree. I can't imagine God loves you. You're an obnoxious kid. Well, that got his attention.
I'm sure.
And he said, so? I said, God created you. Obviously, he needs you. You're part of the puzzle. There's something you can do for the world, for God, for creation, that nobody else can do. So he's kind of stuck with you. I don't know if he likes you. He says, well, what if I don't want to do what he created me for? I said, that's called freedom of choice. God needs you for something, but you have the freedom of choice. You can say no. So take a position. Say yes, no. Say something. Right? Anyway, here's what I learned from this. He attempted suicide, not because his life was miserable. He was a typical kid in Minneapolis. And actually, he tried it with a friend. So it was kind of an adventure, right? Why did he try to commit suicide? Because he doesn't feel necessary. What's the difference? If I am here, I'm not here. My mother will cry for a little bit, but it'll make no difference. I'm not necessary. So if you come to this child and say, but God loves you, he says, that's so stupid. I'm not necessary, but I should hang around because God loves me? That sounds like a pet. Pets are not necessary, but everybody loves them. Well, I'm not willing to be a pet. So I discovered very, very vividly that we need to be needed far more than we need to be loved. So if you want to raise a healthy child, you want to have a healthy relationship, find the need. Skip the love. It'll come. But first you have to be needed. You have to be indispensable. You have to be necessary. That's the human instinct. Am I here for a reason or I'm getting out of here?
And we're going to move on to this next thing, but first I'd like to go ahead. Could you put up his website? It's goodtoknow.org. Just leave it up for a while also. So, and speaking about being necessary, we were speaking to a biologist. He has his doctorate in mosquitoes. He's sitting right where you are, and he was referencing these mosquitoes as if they were people.
He must be from Minnesota.
And as I'm talking to him, I said, what is the purpose of a mosquito? He said, Michael, its purpose is to eat and procreate. What is your purpose, Michael? I was sort of stunned because I didn't know it was going to lead into that.
And so you didn't want to say the same thing as a mosquito.
And so it started making me think about my purpose. And so you wrote a book called Creating a Life That Matters, How to Live and Love with Meaning and Purpose. What is our purpose here? If you're lucky, 75, 85 years. If you're not, so be it. What is our purpose of mankind, of each one of us here?
That is the ultimate question, and we suffer when we don't find an answer. It's not an academic question. It's not a philosophical question. It's tell me why I'm here or I don't want to be here. It's that intense. And that's because we are here for a reason, and we sense it, and we can't put our finger on it. It drives you crazy.
So, and we think about these little kids that are out there that are wondering, at some point, somebody that didn't feel very good about themselves. What is my reason? Why am I here?
Yeah.
Does anybody care about me? Does anybody love me? Right?
Does anybody need me?
Right.
Yeah. No amount of love can make up for not being needed.
I thought it's all you need is love, and it's all about love, and love
Right.
will take care of everything.
Right, in the movies.
But we fall prey to that so often.
Yes. So here's, for all of history, there has never been a day in which human beings weren't asking, why are we here? Isn't that surprising? We've been here for a long time. Settle down. You're here, you belong here, you've never been anyplace else. What is this question? Why does it bother us so much?
And that the answer for that is, as far as why does it bother us so much?
Because we were not created by subatomic particles. We were created by a God who needs something from us. Now that's turning religion on its head. Because religion has always reminded us 1,000 times a day, you're so needy, you're so dependent, you're so fragile, you're so insignificant, you're so dependent on God. Get on your knees, beg him to be good to you. It's so depressing. Now, turn that around.
Okay.
The picture of, I have so many needs, and God is sitting up there in heaven. He has all the answers. He has all the goodies. How do I get him to give me some of that? That's religion, and it's horrible, and it doesn't make sense either.
Both my parents are...
Turn it around.
Okay.
God created the whole universe, but he needs nothing. I created nothing, but I have needs. Doesn't make any sense at all.
Is that why there's so many religions? Everybody has a choice. Both my parents are Jewish. They became Unitarians. That's where I was raised. And we finally referred to Junitarians because there were so many Jews that were there, right? So active in the community from a social point. So as we look to each of our lives, I wonder, what is your purpose?
I got to tell you a joke first, right?
Okay.
What do you get if you cross a witness, a Jehovah's Witness, with a Unitarian?
Okay, I'm ready.
Two guys who knock on your door for no reason.
Exactly. There you go. And there's a lot of truth to that. We were fortunate to interview a local Unitarian minister. I felt like I was in summer camp, and it was wonderful. It was like, be all, do what you want to do. And I happened, when I was growing up, I liked that. So I grew up as a Unitarian. At age 20, I stopped. My wife, who had not fulfilled a Jewish mission at all in life, when she became 30, she was bat mitzvahed out west. I'm in here in Miami, and she became active in looking for a place that she could call home. She went to a couple of congregations. She wound up at first at the Chabad of Kendall and Coral Gables. My son-in-law and my daughter met at Rabbi Friedman's FIU International, Florida International University, Chabad, and eventually wound up at the one in Coconut Grove, where I now go because I was given my marching orders Saturday morning. That's where I need to go. So I become more involved with that. And so I realize it's never too late to do that, to become involved. But back to the original question for you, what is your purpose, and when did you feel the need, if that's what it was, or the desire to do what you do and affect literally millions of people? And I think pretty soon it'll have a B in front of it, right? I'm sure of that as I watch what you do. So why?
Okay. The general answer is, we were created to partner with God in making this world holy. It's a low world. It's a nasty world. People say nature is so beautiful. Not so beautiful. Animals eat each other. They prey on each other. Everything decays. What's so beautiful about it? It looks good for a while, but we need to bring goodness into the world. Or we need to bring God into the world. So God created the world because he wants to come down to earth. He doesn't want us up in heaven. Again, turning religion on its head. God's purpose is create a world that is not godly by its nature, but make it godly by human effort. So our mission is to bring God down to earth. Now, how do you do that? There are billions of ways, so there are billions of people.
You're very active. That would be an understatement on YouTube. You are the #1 YouTube rabbi. I've seen a few of yours in comparison. You do an effective job in the subjects that you cover, and we can go on for 5 minutes and look at the one thing. You have some that are 20 seconds, and it makes you think a lot, and it gets me in to go to the next level. And do we have up on there? Could you put his website up? My father was in radio and TV in the 60s, in the newspapers, and my brother and I have been doing this for 40 years. About a year prior to the pandemic, we said, life is changing again. Having one product doesn't work anymore. And we started doing these type of things here. I have never felt more fulfilled in my entire life than I have in these last 3 or 4 years, because able to share with people on an immediate basis the things that we think that are important and invite the people in to share their wisdom as we're doing today. That has become my mission, to do that as often as I can and to bring as many people in so that they can learn from one another. And we recognize by how many people we are able to affect and people that show up for our luncheons that sometimes these people will never have another opportunity in their entire lives to meet the people that we bring there. And it is an honor to do that. And people can see you next Wednesday on the 18th of Miami. And so I urge people to come see you, because just 5 minutes of your wisdom makes me and all of us think a lot. I used to meditate frequently. And you get to this place to where you're unaware that you're meditating, you're just there. It is such a wonderful feeling. And then one of the things we've learned is there's a lot of noise going on. And we've been taught, just let it go. So how do you let that other noise that goes on, the anti-Semitism, the anger and the hate, and to maintain your semblance of bringing goodness to the world?
Rather than being shocked by the ugliness and the problems and the issues, that's my job. My job is to fix all that. So it doesn't scare me, it doesn't intimidate me. It's my job. So I see what needs to be done. Let's do it. So everything I can do, anything anyone can do to make life on earth better is serving God's purpose. And people say, I'm not religious. Oh, yes, you are. You are serving God most of the day, because what you're doing is making the world better. His world. Everybody talks about tikkun olam, fixing the world, repairing the world. Who cares more than the creator of the world? So if you're fixing the world, it's his world you're fixing, and that's what he wants most. You're serving him. Whoever invented the electric toothbrush is serving God. You made life better for people. Not only the guy who invented it, the guy who manufactures it, the guy who puts it in a box and mails it out to the customer. You're making the world better, you are serving God. You think you're just doing it to make a living? No.
And to what we do here, not just me, but a whole team, I never looked at it like a godly thing. What I look at it is like, this is really good. We're helping a lot of people instantly, right? And repeatedly. I was at Borough Park a couple of years ago, first time, and I went into a Jewish store that all had Jewish items in it. I stood in the store and I cried like a baby, right? And I was just so overwhelmed. And so even as I relive that at this moment, it's like, what is it, all right? And I've learned to accept that there's this connection that was amplified by being with having all this Jewish stuff around me. And so I wonder how many people are out there that are missing something big in their lives because they don't want to walk through a door. And speaking indoors, 1991, I was running the New York Marathon, and it runs through highly Jewish areas. So I said to a friend of mine, come over. Ran across the street, and I stood in front of this synagogue, Orthodox. So all the young people were standing aside, and they took this picture. In 1991, I was as far away from Judaism as possible. So I showed my wife the picture. And so I showed it to her again the other day. I said, you know what? The door has always been there. And there it was, that moment. And I came across it the other day. All you have to do is open up and look inside and see what's there.
So what was the crying about?
I don't know.
What made you?
I don't know. Overwhelmed. It was just like, and Susan, my wife's looking at me. She said, what's going on? I said, I don't know. And at one point, I remember standing out. I said, you know, my grandparents were here somewhere, all right? I know that, all right? And so there is that connection that I didn't have before. And so I'm finding more of that connection. And when I'm in here doing this, I see the river flowing, the ocean flowing, and also in my father, who I had a strange relationship with, but he was in radio and TV, it's flowing. It's going back and forth like it was supposed to be. Not like it was supposed to be, it's supposed to be. So again, I don't know why it was so emotional, and even today it is. But I think it was just that connection that I must have blocked out, because we were not raised in a Jewish household. We were raised in Unitarian, which was, for us, the experience was as much anti-religion. It was more social work, which I happen to enjoy. So there are people like me, all right, that say, I don't want to get near religion. But as I read your books, including the one about creating a life that matters, there may be that slight overtone, but this is about real life, about how to get along, how to live purposefully, and on a goal and a mission to improve life, not just your own. Because by doing this, you've improved your own, rather than just working on this, it fails these other people that are there. So I was with my...
See, there's another problem with love. Yeah. Now, a person says, oh, the popular thinking is, you have to love yourself. First thing, first you must love yourself. Validate yourself. Have a high self-esteem. Have a good self-image. It is so depressing. It is so unhealthy.
It was almost like that was the requirement. You got to do that in order to do this.
Yeah. Because the mistake is, love does not exist for you to have. It's for you to give. It's like, I am a very talented communicator, so I spend a lot of time talking to myself. They're going to take you away. Speech was not created for you to talk to yourself. Speech means you can communicate with someone else. And the same is true with every talent we have. You're capable of loving? Not to love yourself. That's ridiculous. You'll choke on it.
Let's talk about, you have grandkids, you go over to them, you give them a big hug, and I love you, and then they, okay. And you know, you tap them on the shoulder. Give it back to me. So we're training people, generations, to repeat that. And I think it was one of your books or one of your videos, it was, don't say it to hear it. Because if you're saying to hear it, then what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And when Susan, who didn't tell me she was practicing that, but I figured it out after watching one of your shows, it was a TV show if I remember right, and she stopped saying that to me in response. I'm going, what does that mean? Does that mean she's not in love with me? Does that mean she's tried to test? Does that mean she doesn't care? And so all those questions come up when we don't hear what we have heard for so many years. So if somebody is practicing giving love and not asking for it in return, tell me about the changes that we as human beings have to go through so we don't have that expectation of receiving that back.
It's fake news. You don't need it. We've been brainwashed. Love is not something I need for me. Love is something I can give you. That's the nature of love. We're distorting it. We're destroying it. It's not for me. It's like a guy who's worth $200 billion. It's his money, legally, But is it for him? You got to be crazy to think that's all for him.
Mm-hmm.
It's your money. So what are you doing? Keeping it under your mattress? You're crazy.
So how are people supposed to find that internal love without getting the pat on the back?
We're born with it. Every infant loves itself too much. As you grow, you learn to give it away.
Years ago, I was in therapy. I said to the doc, when I first started, I said, Doc, this is the way it works. I pay you, you listen. My father never listened to me. You're going to listen. 15 years later, how come you never tell me I do good? And then I said, don't answer me. I see it. I saw it because you're supposed to find it from within. And as soon as I recognized that, my life got better. When Hurricane Andrew came many years ago and my medal from running the New York Marathon was lost, I said, it doesn't matter. It's here. And then the remaining ones are hanging in some closet somewhere where it doesn't matter. Well, what I did find was a 10th anniversary ring that I gave to my wife on the top of the destroyed home. That was so significant for me as we were there with all our stuff scattered all over. So there's two different events. One that was internal, that nobody cared about, and I learned not to care about it. And the other was sharing with my wife this moment that was very intimate, as we were wondering if we were going to die from before. And so we got an opportunity to start over again. So what's the advice for young parents of young kids, right? And about raising them so they can love themselves and give to the world?
Piece of advice is, we all know, and we're very sure, that when a child misbehaves, you don't condemn the child. You condemn the behavior. You never say, you're rotten, you're bad, you're evil. You say, that was rotten, that was bad, that was evil. Don't do that. Right? But when a kid does something good, see, we're not consistent. If he does something bad, it's what he did that was bad, not the child. But if he does something good, all of a sudden he's an angel, he's a tzaddik, he's a saint, he's perfect. No, don't do that. The kid did something good. Focus on what he did and say, that's good.
And as we wind this down, how do you want to be remembered?
You're assuming I want to be remembered.
Well, we will remember you.
I got to tell you this one thing. First thing that went on TikTok when we decided we're going to go with it. You know, a little controversial, but we're going to go on TikTok. 8 million hits in 2 days. Here's what I said, and it's not original. I heard it somewhere. If you raise your children, then you can spoil your grandchildren. But if you spoil your children, you're going to have to raise your grandchildren, yes. And you're too old for that. 8 million hits in 2 days, because it's so true.
So people like that, right? That's
because it's so true. Everybody, wow, that's true.
And then in those few moments, you reach so many people, and then assuming that some of them told somebody else what you said, right?
Yeah, it was very often repeated. So what does it mean to raise your kids? Raise them, elevate them. From what to what? From self to other. Every kid is born selfish, petty, cruel. And that's the nature of a child. Me, 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 me. That's their starting point. Raise them from there. So don't tell them they're wonderful. Tell them what they did was right, what they did was correct, what they did was meaningful.
So you are certainly raising the consciousness of the world, and I compliment you for that. And even though we're not sure how you want to be remembered, we see your fine work every day. And so there are tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people that get a little tidbit about you. They can go on TikTok, see yourself. They can go on YouTube. They can see you a week from today at Chabad in Coconut Grove. It's listed in Chabad of Miami. We've been running the website address that's there. And you have a wonderful website, where people can find out a little bit more about you. and some of the videos that you've done.
It's good to know.
It's good to know.
.org.
Rabbi Manis
gotta tell
Friedman,
you,
thank you very much.
The most exciting thing about this, these are all Jewish concepts, but they're totally universal. We're in this ship together, all 8 billion of us. We do it differently, but we're doing the same thing.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Folks, thank you for joining us, and take care of yourself and your family. Have a good day.